Hey, it's Drew Bentley here with Learn Guitar with Drew. Today we're going to look at 5 ways to get smoother chord transitions and chord changes and to get over that hump of being stuck and not being able to play songs in time. But first, thank you so much for checking out this video. I'm really excited to be doing this. I've been teaching guitar for 24 years, pretty much as my full-time job, and I'm so excited to be here doing this on the internet to try to help as many people as I can to learn to do what I love to do, which is play the guitar. We should all play the guitar. If everybody played guitar, there'd be a lot less wars, there'd be a lot less problems in the world, people would get along better, we'd all be happy. So thank you so much for supporting what I'm doing here. Please hit that subscribe button and click the bell for notifications for when more lessons and videos come out. And in the comment section down below, you'll find links for my websites and lots of other guitar resources. Okay, so one of the things that I see all the time with guitar is that people progress to a certain point and then they get frustrated, and that's pretty much this what this lesson is all about. So there's, I believe, 18 million people in the United States of America who play guitar, who say they play guitar. Around the world, it's probably 100 million, I don't know. And it seems to me that there's a certain drop-off point where you can play to a certain degree and then you just kind of give up, and that's what this lesson's all about. Being able to play chord changes from one to another and smoothly transition from chords is a big issue with beginner guitar players. So basically the way I look at it is, when you first start playing, it's like, let's say it's 1849, it's the gold rush, you're going to California to go get some gold, and you get there and there's these huge nuggets of gold in the ground, like giants floating in the stream. You walk into town, you're like, hey, I'm rich, you know. You get this giant nugget of gold. Well, after a little while, that gold's going to dry up. There's not going to be gold in the river anymore, so you're going to have to dig for it. And this is all about digging. This is the point in your guitar progression, in your guitar development, where you have to kind of roll up your sleeves and dig in and do some work to get these chord changes to work. So after years and years of watching this happen, this is the system that I came up with to help you do this. So the first thing is what I call flow to the floor. Now, I've never seen this spoken of before, but it's something that developed, advanced, or successful guitar players do sort of organically, but I don't know if it's ever really been pinpointed before, so I think it's really important. I call this flow to the floor. This is the first step here, and there's some kind of subcategories. When you play a chord, most of the time you're strumming down first. Now, sometimes you strum up, most of the time you're strumming down. So when somebody comes in for lessons, I ask them to play a C chord, they'll do this: 1, 2, 3, strum. Invariably, the F chord, 1, 2, 3, strum. Now you can see that sequentially makes sense in your mind, 1, 2, 3, go, kind of thing. But it doesn't make sense with the physics of the instrument moving in a downward fashion. However, if I were to do this instead, going to the floor, everything's flowing now. So what you do is you get your pick in your left hand, or if you're right-handed, left-handed, it's the opposite, and you have to sort of get your right hand ready to go, so it's not just kind of sitting off to the side, and coordinate these together synergistically, make your hands move in a downward fashion, adding your fingers sequentially in the direction of the floor. So jazz players do this naturally. If we play this, jazz players play a chord melody. The melody is generally at the top, so I'm going to kind of strum in a downward fashion anyways, and you can see my fingers. That finger is the last one to get there. Now, I'm not doing that purposely. It's just how it is. You'd like to be able to stamp the chord, sort of like you're branding a cow, but you can't really stamp it When you get very much better at guitar, playing something like, I'm kind of stamping the chord there, but even then I'm doing this sort of a flam, brah, kind of thing with my fingers. So there's an order of operations called, I call it flow to the floor. So the first exercise is to arpeggiate. Pick out the individual notes of any chord you can think of. Any of these basic cowboy chords. C chord, A minor. So when I do this, the idea is what I call a lead-off finger. That's the first finger to make contact on your way through the chord. So for this G chord, my second finger is my lead-off finger. For the C chord, my third finger is my lead-off finger. So whatever finger makes contact first in your downward direction is your lead-off finger. So you'll notice I play this G chord, these guys get there last. So the first exercise when flowing to the floor is to arpeggiate every individual chord that you might know in the first position and just practice moving them in a downward direction. This will speed things up tremendously for you. This takes a lot longer. Okay, so the second of the 5 steps to get faster is what I call the dancer. Okay, so we want to have flowing guitar playing. Everything should be graceful. Like if you look at somebody dancing or somebody throws a football, Ben Roethlisberger throws a football, it's very graceful. There's a graceful motion to this. So guitar playing is no different. So what we're going to do is we're going to make our chord change. We're going to exaggerate the gracefulness of it, and we're going to apex at the halfway point of your hand transitioning. So when you play piano, you have to pick your hands up over the black keys to move to the next position, right? As guitar players, we tend to think that we can just turn a doorknob to change chords. That is not the case. Our hand has to come back off and go back on again. So the idea here to do this is to make a smooth transition. So the first thing we're going to do is do that for 4 beats. So check it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I moved up, I'm halfway down, the halfway point, I'm back down again. Let's try it for 2 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. Half a beat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. A 16th of a beat, which is a 16th note. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and. Now you notice that my motion is the same. For each one of those smaller increments, it's still smooth and it's very graceful. So the way we do this is we have to exaggerate the chord change. It's not going to sound so good at the beginning, but that's okay. So our ear wants it to sound good. Our ear's like, no, don't do that, don't do that. Make it sound good right now. You have to be patient and ignore your ear for the moment and watch my exaggeration. I'm going to play C. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Going back and forth between C and G, just because those are the 2 chords I just chose to do. I could do that with A and D. I could do that with C and F. Doesn't matter. The point is I was up and then down, spanning 4 beats. Now if I do that for 2 beats, it's like this. 1, 2, and switch in. And switch in. Now you notice the entire time I'm doing this, I'm flowing to the floor and I'm using that lead-off finger. Let's try it with a quarter note. 1, 2, 3, 4 switch. 1, 2, 3, 4 switch. 1. Now it's starting to sound more like music. So if we do an 8th note, I'm going to fit that little smooth transition into just 1 8th note space. Check it out. Now you notice my hand is still graceful. In other words, it's not kind of like confused, not knowing where to go. I call that the toddler walk. Like when my son, who's 4 years old, walks up the steps, he goes da-da, ba-da, ba-da, ba-da. We don't want to do that. We don't want to scramble and be like, ah, and not know which fingers to put down first. If you do them in the order of operations like I'm talking about and flow to the floor, it becomes automatic and you don't have to think about it. When you play guitar, you want as many things as you can to be automatic, technically and mechanically, so spiritually and emotionally and musically you can play whatever you want to because your hands are already doing what they're supposed to do. So if that makes sense. We don't want to be panicky and confused and not know where to go. If we do things in the order of operations, now I will make a little side note here. If you're playing with an up strum first, like on reggae music, that's exactly the opposite. So once you learn all this stuff, if you happen to do an up strum first in the pattern, just do the opposite. So that's pretty simple. The third thing we're going to focus on is common tones and what I call open and closed hands. The C chord to me is open. Now this is just my own thing, but this looks open to me. This looks more closed. If your hand's like this, it's open. If it's like this, it's closed. So some chords, this C to the F chord, are both kind of open. So I can see that that transition is very smooth. I'm going to have other lessons about these specific things. It's coming up here soon, but basically these chords are moving smoothly. If I do the same thing with G and C at 9, they're sort of moving smoothly. Now sometimes you're going to run into something where you're playing this G chord and the C chord. It's kind of like toom, closed, toom, open. Your palm's doing that to that. That's okay, as long as you work on the flow to the floor and your lead off finger, and memorize which finger goes down first on the lowest string, you'll be fine. So then the common tone thing is if I play this G chord and this D chord, that D note is a common tone. C to F, common tone. So this third stage here is to pay attention to what your hand's doing mechanically and take advantage of the chords whenever they're moving smoothly, or be aware when they're sort of working in a converse fashion, in the opposite fashion, and then you have to kind of lean more on that lead-off finger. The lead-off finger thing makes sense because if I play this chord here, naturally I'm playing the bass note first, then the chord, which jazz players, and they do that all the time, bass strum. So the lead-off finger is very exaggerated there. You can see I'm definitely leading off with that. So the third stage here is to pay attention to whether your hand's moving sort of in the same fashion or if it's moving the opposite fashion. Take advantage of your common tones and try to move smoothly through those transitions, smooth transitions. The fourth thing, I call this the sneeze chord. So sneezing is a lot like saying ouch. Everybody in the whole world says hachoo, kind of the same. It's sort of, God bless you will be different in every language, but the sneeze is kind of the same. So the idea here, this is interesting. If you play faster than quarter notes, the last strum, you're going to strum some strings. So I call this the sneeze chord. With open chords, these open position chords that are quasi-related to the open strings, this will work to simply go ha-choo, 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 ha-choo. Now, we do this all the time. We may not be aware of it, but there's that transitional moment. It actually sounds much more natural to do a little upstrum than to just kind of not do the upstrum. That doesn't sound natural. So I play a song like that last strum of that. If you think of that as a ha-choo, and you just isolate that and go ha-choo, any chord you want. Here's E minor, A add 9, here's C, here's G. Each time I'm doing ha-choo, ha-choo. Now this works if you have a pattern that's faster than quarter notes, anything with an eighth note. And 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, ha-choo, ha-choo, right? Now, 16th note, same thing. If I go, here it is. On most of those chord changes, I did an open strum in between them. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. Now, sometimes you're going to play chords that don't relate to the open strings. Like if I play this guy. I call that a donkey chord. Hee-haw. So these jazz chords, quote unquote jazz chords, this is a D flat major 7, is not quasi-related to the open strings. So it's not going to sound good. So that kind of works like, it's interesting. It works like in a major second format. Works, 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 doesn't work, doesn't work, works, 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 doesn't work, doesn't work. It's that has to do with the circle of fifths and how it's laid out on the fretboard. But anyways, so when you have this sort of chord that doesn't work with those open strings for the last upstrum, what you simply do is do a dampen. So that's what jazz players do. It's called comping. And there's a lot more involved in this, like swing and other techniques, but it's called comping. So if I go like this, still doing that little ha-choo, but it's open. It's not open strings, it's deadened strings. Now that will happen here too. If you play something like that, where you're sort of folding your hand and dampening. So the fourth step here of these 5 steps is that you practice that last upstrum. So once you start playing some patterns, you know how to make that transition to the chord, to the next chord, smoothly right before you land on the next chord. And then finally is the metronome. So I'm always harping about the metronome. practice all of these things with the metronome. The first thing you practice is you practice arpeggiating the chords, but with the metronome. So tick, tick, pick a tempo that's comfortable for you. Whatever you can do smoothly without, massive mistakes. So you practice arpeggiating the chords with a metronome. Practice the transitions of the chords with the metronome. So let's go over these 5 steps again, and we will kind of wrap this up here so you can get to practicing. But here's how it works. The first thing is flow to the floor. That I can't stress this enough. Practice your chord changes. Practice your chords going from the lower string to the higher string. Most of the time, that's the case. Now, sometimes you strum up first. And like I had mentioned, when you strum up first, you just do exactly the opposite of what I'm saying. But once you memorize it the right way, doing it the backwards way, it won't be that hard. So flow to the floor is first, the first step. Within flow to the floor, we have arpeggiate the chords. We also have what I call the lead-off finger. So memorize whichever finger goes down first. Because if your mind can memorize that finger, the rest of your fingers will follow. If I know I'm playing this note first, I know the chord well enough that I can, if I was a very beginner guitar player, I might know the chord well enough that I can just continue on with it. And remember, it's important to coordinate the 2 things together, so your left hand, your right hand are working together. Your right hand's ready to go right behind the other one, sort of sweeping right behind the other hand. Sweeping it right behind it. That'll get you there faster. Don't have this guy sitting on the sidelines. Wait, I'm supposed to play a chord now. See how that works if I go like doom, doom. Okay? Now that's how long it takes to change. We're trying to beat that. That's what I see all the time. We're going to defeat that and play smoothly. The second one is what I call the dancer. This requires a lot of patience. Up, 2, 3, 4, down, 2, 3, 4. Exaggerate the whole note for chord changes. Strum, 2 and 3 and 4, and strum and 2, and almost like slow motion. But then a half note sounds better. 1, 2, and switch and switch and then the quarter note. 1, 2, 3, 4, switch. 1, 2, 3, 4, switch. Step 2 incorporates step 1 with the flow to the floor and the lead-off finger. The third was to do focus on common fingerings, like the C and the F chord work together. You can see both of these sort of are open. The G and the C add 9 are sort of closed. So be aware if your hand is this way or if it's that way. And whenever you go to the lead-off finger, that will help you to memorize, to know what the lowest note is so you don't get confused and lost when you're making these chord changes, and pay attention to common tones. A D note is common for both of those, so I'm aware of that. I may lift it off just a littlest bit, but I'm still focusing on that. Makes things easier. This is like just a smooth transition. There's D minor, F, C. Everything kind of just flows together. However, I could have done this as well. That happens when I do that. I'm going to pay attention to the lead-off finger and flowing to the floor. The fourth thing was the sneeze chord. The sneeze chord is very important. Just literally practice strumming up through the string and down through a chord. So when you practice these chord changes, you want to do 2 chords first, which I call, it's called a vamp, and then ultimately a progression. So any song you're working on, whatever song it is, you could break it down into just 2 chords. Like, let's say you're playing a song that has 5 chords in it. And instead of playing all 5 chords in a row and getting frustrated, practice the first and second chord, and then the second and third chord, and maybe the first and third chord, then maybe the first, second, and third chord. Do them in different orders, make little baby songs out of bigger songs. Practice it with whole notes, half notes, and quarter notes before you worry about strumming patterns. Practice the song with whole notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Eventually you'll get to the point where you can do a strumming pattern, but maybe whole notes are easier for you. It kind of takes some of the burden off of your strumming. The next thing was to practice the sneeze chords with chords that don't relate to the open strings. So if I'm doing that, I have to learn how to do this chick in between here. That enables you to buy that little extra time there. And then once you get to this level, you can start doing some strumming patterns, right? If I go down, 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 up, down, 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 up, down, 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 up, down, 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 up, down. I'm able to do that strumming pattern because of that sneeze chord at the end. Now, As far as strumming patterns go, the easier one is to not do the up on the and of 4 or the andia. So your two subdivisions for strumming patterns are you're either playing in 8th notes or you're playing in 16th notes. If you're doing 8th notes, it's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and. Or if it's a song that has 16th notes, it's 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. Now you don't always strum with all those strums. That sounds terrible. A lot of times you miss the strums. So I'm not really hitting on all those, but there's still the subdivision is tippy versus ta-ta, which is the 8th notes. The sneeze technique is for you to incorporate that last up strum. So the simpler strumming pattern would be not to upstrum on the and of 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 4 switch. 1, 2, and 3, and 4 switch. But if I get to a little more advanced stage, I can go 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and I can do that up strum on the strings. So that's the 4th step, is how to do that sneeze chord to incorporate strumming patterns into your playing. And then the final step was to do all these with a metronome. Set your metronome to a comfortable marker. Try arpeggiating the chords with a metronome, focusing on flowing to the floor. Try going back and forth between 2 chords, and then ultimately 3 or 4 chords, and do this with the dancer thing. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. Whole notes, then half notes, 2, and switch. And then quarter notes, 1, 2, 3, 4 switch. 1, 2, 8 notes, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4 switch. 1, 16th notes, 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a, and then try to incorporate that into a song and see how it goes. Little bits of a song and then add more. If you're practicing this with a metronome, it'll help you to kind of play at the tempo. So let's say the song's 108 beats a minute. Try it at half speed. Try it at 54 beats a minute, and then speed it up from there. You can work your way up to the speed of the song. You can also simplify your strumming by not playing all those strums and playing the song in time, but with whole strums, whole notes, and not doing a strumming pattern, which will help you to incorporate the metronome. Incorporate the metronome with the sneeze chord then added into it as well. So we have 5 steps: flow to the floor, the dancer for smooth transitions, common tones and smooth transitions with the hand position open or closed, doing the sneeze chord thing, and practicing all of it with the metronome. Okay, so you can take this same philosophy, the same process, and use this for every song that you're working on. If it's a Beatles song or if it's a Green Day song, whatever you're trying to play, start to use all of these concepts and use them when you're learning your songs. Before you know it, you won't have to do any of this stuff anymore. It just becomes second nature. The idea of doing this is that you don't have to do it eventually, but this is a good methodology to help you start to play in time. Again, everybody should play guitar. It's the greatest thing in the whole world. Like, absolutely love it. And it's painful to watch people get to a certain point and then they get really frustrated and they want to drop off and not play anymore. So we don't want that to happen. Everybody should push through and get to the point where you can play songs in tempo at the speed of the song. And then the whole world opens up. Then the floodgates are off, and next thing you know, you're shredding, playing a million miles an hour, writing songs, making records, whatever. All those things can happen. This is a moment where this struggle is very real, and we're going to burst through that and make this happen. Okay. Well, hopefully you enjoyed today's lesson. Again, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. I'm really enjoying doing these online lessons. Hopefully it's helping people. Leave a comment in the comment section down below if you have anything you want to add to the conversation, any questions, things that you want me to cover on the channel. And I'm putting videos out as fast as I can, so please stop back again. And as always, I can't wait to see you at the next lesson.